What does this case mean for him and his businesses going forward? Let's break this down with Mike Davis. Mike Davis, thanks for being here with us. Always great to get your insight. Let me just, big picture wise, this Trump strategy on the New York case, how is it going? How do you see this thing playing out?
Well, there's no chance that President Trump is going to get a fair trial in New York. You have a Democrat judge who has a vendetta against President Trump, and that's pretty clear. When before the trial even began, this judge ruled that Trump somehow committed fraud before any witness came in, before any other evidence came in, before cross-examination, before Trump was able to put on his own case. This Democrat judge just looked at the tax assessor's page in Palm Beach and said that Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, according to this tax assessor, and Trump said it was worth a lot more than that, so Trump committed fraud. And that's just an insane legal analysis. Mar-a-Lago...
Mike, this is what I don't get. And I've always said this, to the audience. I'm not a lawyer. I watch a ton of Law and Order, but most of it's criminal intent, and so we don't get into this. How does that happen where the judge, before the trial even starts, says you're guilty of fraud? I didn't understand that. What is that I don't get about the legal system that says before the trial starts, before any evidence has been introduced, Letitia James brought this case valuing Mar-a-Lago at $18 million or et cetera, and yet he's guilty, and then he has to go to court to mitigate some... I miss this.
So this is a civil fraud lawsuit, and in civil cases, if there's no material dispute of facts...
But there are. I mean,
yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point. There are clear material disputes of fact. The key one being, is Mar-a-Lago worth $18 million, or is this 20-acre property down in the most expensive part of America that has land from the ocean to the intercoastal worth more than $18 million? A tennis court at Mar-a-Lago is worth more than $18. Regardless, that's something that should be resolved at trial through witnesses and other evidence and cross-examination, not by this goofball Democrat partisan judge just saying before trial that I think it's worth $18 million in Trump.
I get that. And that's what I think is laughable, right? Anyone with access to Zillow is sitting there going, oh, you can't get a tennis court there. Or actually, it would probably be a little bungalow there. But I don't get, what happened to his ability to contest this? Because from what I understand, and again, just help unpack this, that he went in, they basically said, you're guilty of fraud, but you can mitigate some of the penalties.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's so messed up about this New York law is there's not even the opportunity for Trump to request a jury. And I don't know how that doesn't violate the Seventh Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, where you can just have a judge just decree that Trump committed fraud before there's even a trial, and then the judge makes the determination that Trump could face up to $250 million in damages. I mean, I don't understand how that's constitutional, and I don't think it is. And so I think Trump's going to have to appeal this all the way up to the Supreme Court. And that's the problem with our politicized and weaponized justice system. This is lawfare and election interference by Democrat prosecutors and Democrat lawyers and Democrat judges and several different Democrat hellholes around the country, whether it's New York, DC, or Atlanta.
So in these crazy times, the economy, the interest rates going nuts, you're probably looking to figure out ways to secure your financial future. And so I would tell you the smartest thing you can do is head over and talk to my friends at Bishop Gold Group. I've known these guys for a while. I trust them. They are America's premier precious metals company. They can help put a plan together for you if you're a first-time investor, if you've been doing this for a while, talk to you about the different opportunities that will give you the confidence to invest, whether it's gold, platinum, silver, whatever. They'll tell you based on your particular needs what's best for you. You can talk to them about converting an IRA, starting from scratch, converting some other securities, whatever it is. Bishop Gold Group is the place that I trust and that I've gotten. They can give you a range of options that fit your particular needs. So if you want to give them a call, you can do that at 844-984-1616 or visit bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean, and you'll actually get a little something little something to start your journey through precious metals. So go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean, SEAN, and you will start down a journey that you won't forget. Tell them I sent you. I'm so fascinated by how this went down. Number one, Mar-a-Lago's in Florida. What jurisdiction does New York have over how he values Mar-a-Lago?
Well, the hook for New York is that they're alleging that President Trump overvalued Mar-a-Lago when he was trying to get money from sophisticated Wall Street banks. But just think about their fraud theory. President Trump paid back these sophisticated Wall Street banks in full, on time, with interest as agreed. They weren't.
But here's
the
other thing that I don't get. And again, I just appreciate your insight in this, because so I've had a home equity loan before, right? And they'll say, "What's the value of your house?" Now, I love my house. I think it's worth $1 billion because, you know, there's so many memories here, blah, 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 blah. But the bank would say, give me a break. We're going to get an appraisal for you. We're not a bunch of dummies. This is what we do. If we're going to give you money, our appraiser is going to go in there. So who cares with all due respect, who cares what Donald Trump, he probably thinks that Trump Tower's worth, or Mar-a-Lago's worth $1 quadrillion because of how beautiful it is, the weddings that have been there and the memories. But no one's going to lend you money unless a credible appraiser goes in there. And so why are they going after Donald Trump and not these people whose job it is? Because he is not an appraiser.
Yeah, I mean, it's an insane legal argument. And they're saying that under New York law, you don't need a victim for fraud. Well, I don't know how that's lawful. I mean, you can't just have advisory opinions. You have to have people with standing to bring claims. You need to have injury in fact, and who is injured here, right? If the state attorney general is bringing this fraud claim on behalf of the people of the state of New York, okay, how were they injured by this transaction, this private transaction that President Trump made with this private bank, and he paid back this private bank in full, on time, as agreed, with interest? Tish James is trying to argue that Trump got this money, so maybe New Yorkers didn't get the money, but that's too attenuated for standing under the Constitution. Article 3 standing, constitutional standing, requires someone's actually injured, injury in fact.
So walk me through where this goes from here, right? I mean, we all agree that that Mar-a-Lago and the other properties, even if they were, there's no victim. I mean, we can lay out a million things. I think there's no question. I mean, so what's at stake here? They've already found him, quote, guilty of fraud. We're mitigating or trying to mitigate the penalties. But what's the next step if you're Donald Trump and his legal team?
Well, I mean, I think that this Judge Engoron, who is a partisan deranged.
Oh, you're going to get yourself censored, Mike. You're going to have a gag order.
You know what's great about this, Sean, is I actually hope that Judge Engoron tries to put a gag order on me, because I will fight that all the way to the Supreme Court and beat him like a drum at the Supreme Court. So I hope he tries that. But I would say this, that Judge Engoron is going to fine President Trump probably the full $250 million, find that there's damages of $250 million, even though there's not a jury trial. And then I think that they're going to take away President Trump's business licenses in New York and try to destroy Trump's family business. And so they're going to try to throw him in prison for non-crimes. They're going to gag him in violation of his First Amendment rights. And then they're going to try to bankrupt him. And then the next step is they're going to try to take him off the ballot in key swing states.
He finds him guilty. He fines him $250 million. He takes away the business license. For the aforementioned reasons that you and I have just discussed, what are Trump's next legal steps in this case alone?
Well, I mean, he could appeal this. He would appeal this through the state appellate process to the New York Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in the land. It's like the New York Supreme Court. And I just don't think that Trump is going to get a fair shake at all in New York. And here's the bigger ramification for New York. When they're on this mission to take out Trump, this Trump derangement, they're going to scare a lot of business people and jobs away from New York if they continue with this bogus legal theory that somehow it's fraud to make a representation about the value of your property and the bank disagrees or doesn't disagree, but the New York Attorney General steps in and says, you know what, we think both of you got this wrong. The sophisticated Wall Street bank who got paid back on time in full with interest as agreed, and then the person who borrowed the money, we think that that's wrong, so we're going to go after the person who borrowed the money and try to bankrupt them. That's not going to fly with New York business people. They're going to leave New York and go to states where it's more business friendly, and that's going to destroy New York jobs and the New York tax base.
It's just imagine. I think, and I'm not making any accusations, but I've got to imagine that if you're Letitia James, there were a few bigger targets to fire at in terms of the people in Wall Street and the financial firms that may have done something than a real estate guy from several years ago evaluating properties potentially over what they might be worth. I get your point, but it sort of does the idea that this wasn't a political witch hunt. If you stop and say to yourself, okay, how long has this really been going on? You suddenly now bring it up out of nowhere. And all of the financial and private equity firms and lending institutions that are in New York, not one of them has done anything. And yet you're going after a real estate guy for overvaluating property that, to your point, there's no victim on.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me. It seems like Tish James may have too much money. Maybe the New York legislature, I mean, it's all Democrat. They're going to keep funding her. But I mean, it's just like if you have this much money in the New York Attorney General's office to go after a businessman who paid back the Wall Street Bank in full on time as agreed with interest, and you somehow think that's fraud. If you have those resources as a prosecutor's office, maybe you have too many resources.
But also, like, she keeps trying to claim that this isn't political. But she's on tape over and over and over and over again when she was campaigning saying, oh, I'm going to get Trump, or I'm going to do this, or don't worry, he's in my sights and I'm going to call he's illegitimate. And I mean, like, over and over again, she makes it clear her political bias and that she's trained all of her venom on him. And now is trying to say, oh, this has nothing to do with politics.
It has everything to do with politics. She campaigned on the fact, like you said, Sean, that she's going to get Trump. And this is part of the Democrats' lawfare and election interference. Why are they bringing 4 indictments right now? Why are they bringing this civil fraud lawsuit right now to bankrupt Trump and take away his livelihood? Why are they trying to gag him in 2 different jurisdictions? Why are they trying to kick him off the ballot in several different states? This is obviously political.
So you mentioned the New York Supreme Court. As far as I know, that tilts very left. Trump's not going to probably get a fair trial there either. Is that where it ends, or can he keep going all the way to the Supreme Court?
He does have issues that he can raise for the U.S. Supreme Court, and a couple of constitutional issues he can raise. It's going to be hard, but a couple of constitutional issues is, again, how do you take away $250 million from someone and not have a jury involved?
So if you looked into your magic 8-ball, how does this end? And you shook it. What is it going to say? I mean, because it sounds to me that what you're saying is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Look, we all see this judge in New York. He's made it very clear he's going after Trump. The New York Supreme Court doesn't favor Trump. And then it's going to be tough to get a constitutional issue. I mean, does this mean that where this likely ends in at least the short term is that his business license gets pulled and the penalties get instilled?
Yes. I mean, I think that's exactly where they're going. And here's the problem, Sean. I think the American people are going to be kind of like stunned by this. Like, wait, you're going to take away this guy's livelihood and fine him $250 million for what? He paid back the bank.
Yeah, but I see, Mike, this is where I disagree. I need someone like you who's really smart in this area to explain it to me. And I just wonder, the American people, you get half of a country who already hate Trump no matter what, and they don't really care. Katie bar the door, break the law, as long as it's in pursuit of the greater good, go after Trump, right? They don't really care. And then the other half, I think there's a mixed bag. There's people who, like me, say this is ridiculous what you're doing to the guy. And then there's a bunch of people who don't care. And I think part of it is they don't have the Mike Davises of the world to explain how legally ridiculous this is. And I that's why I think the Dems get away with so much stuff like this, because not enough people are willing to care and to fight.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, Sean. I would say this lawfare has been going on since August of 2022. And, I've done over 2,000 hits with the media supporting and defending President Trump over that period. It's been a slog. And for the first probably 8 months of that, I was largely the only voice out there supporting and defending Trump, right? And I would say this, look at the polling right now. Look at how this lawfare has backfired on these Democrats. They might win these cases with these Democrat judges and prosecutors and juries and these Democrat hellholes like DC New York, Atlanta, and now Denver, Colorado. But guess what? The American people can defeat all this by putting President Trump back in the White House.
Let me just bring up the last issue that you just touched on before we go, which is this 14th Amendment issue that Colorado and other states are touching on now, which basically says that within the 14th Amendment, a clause of it that was put in place after the Civil War to prevent Confederate officers from serving is now being potentially used against Trump to keep him off the ballot because they claim as a, quote, officer of the United States, he engaged in insurrection. Break down what you think, where this thing heads and how it ends.
So I was in the Denver trial all last week, and this Denver district court judge, this new judge that just started in January, is Sarah Wallace. She's a Democrat donor. She donated to an anti-Trump January 6th PAC, and now she's presiding over an anti-Trump January 6th trial. Trump's attorneys filed a motion to recuse. She said, yeah, I made the donation. I don't remember making the donation, but I can still be fair. That's not the legal standard, right? The legal standard is not whether she subjectively thinks she could be fair. It's whether the public objectively thinks that she could be fair. And I don't think that any reasonable observer would say that a judge who just donated in October to an anti-Trump January 6th PAC is going to be fair in an anti-Trump January 6th trial. That's reversible error right there alone. This judge is going to disqualify President Trump from the ballot in Colorado. It's an election challenge. It will be going up to the Colorado Supreme Court on an expedited basis. I think by the end of this year, the Colorado Supreme Court will affirm. They'll keep Trump off the ballot in Colorado. The Supreme Court has discretionary review. Let's see if the Supreme Court can put on its big boy pants and decide.
But don't you think
this
is not, Mike? This is. I agree with you. Cannot believe that we're hoping the Supreme Court puts on its big boy pants, to use your phrase, to decide whether or not the American people can choose who they want for president. What the heck is going on in this country? I mean, the judicial system at the state and the federal level has clearly gotten weaponized to the point where we can't even make a decision now. It has blown my mind what we've seen happen in the last, 24, 36 months?
Yeah, I mean, I've been screaming about this since August of 2022, since the Mar-a-Lago raid, the unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful home raid on a former president for presidential records he's allowed to have. I've been sounding this alarm. I think what we need are members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, to get their heads out of their behinds and actually start making a big deal about this. Like, this is lawfare. This is election interference. These are republic-ending tactics. If they try to imprison Trump, if they bankrupt him, if they just take him off the ballot so the American people don't have a choice, we're going to lose our country. Republic-ending
I just want to end with this. I honestly can't believe, I think for people who are hearing what you're saying, and you are right, you have been one of the lone voices out there, not just defending Trump, because I think that it's easy to defend Trump. What you are doing is explaining the legal consequences that really matter in this. And that's why I think your voice is so different, unique, and needed, because you are explaining to people, you can hate Trump, but here are the legal and constitutional consequences of what you're doing. And I appreciate how you do what you do, because it's so critical going forward. So thank you for that. And for being constantly an amazing guest with us, because it's not just defending Trump. Frankly, a lot of people can do that. You do it in a way that makes people appreciate the consequences. And that's what I want the audience to understand, that when you're debating people at Thanksgiving who hate Trump and say he's horrible, explain to him what Mike Davis is telling you. Explain to them why this matters, because it's not about Trump. He says it all the time. It's about you. They can take his business down for no reason. They can take yours. If they can keep him off the ballot, they can keep anyone that you support off the ballot. It's bigger than Trump. And explain to them, watch what Mike Davis says, replay this before you gather with your crazy uncle, and let them understand what's really at stake, because I appreciate everything you said. Mike,